For the first time in Ghana, a group of junior army officers had attempted to pull down a military regime made up of senior army officers. One could say that the abortive attempt had been brought about by extremely compelling factors. The trial of the coup plotters was very revealing. J.J. Rawlings, who boldly owned up as the one person centrally responsible for the attempt, gave cogent and infectiously popular reasons to explain why the attempted coup was justifiable.
After the first day's trial, adjournment was granted for the court to resume in 2 days. History did not allow the full text of Rawlings' draft mentioned by the prosecutor ever to be read, but in his own handwriting, as obtained from research, he said, "Fellow citizens of Ghana, now you listen to me well and good, because I'm not here to make a speech, and I'm not here to waste my time talking. First and foremost, let me inform you that I am not here to impose myself on 10 million citizens of this country, but I am telling you that I'm here today in the history of this country to address myself to military senior officers, all those politicians, all those businessmen and foreign criminals who have used our blood and sweat and tears, the toils of our laboring to enrich themselves, to drown in wine and women, while you and I, while the majority of us, are daily struggling for survival. Yes, I know what it feels like going to bed with a headache for want of food in the stomach. Let me give you, the struggling and suffering masses, just one little warning. Should anyone or group of you dare collaborate or help exploiting pigs run away, this country will once more bleed than we anticipate. I am not an expert in economics, and I am not an expert in law, but I am an expert in working on an empty stomach while wondering when and where the next meal will come from. I am going to prove to you today that it is no longer a question of the military against the civilian. It is no longer a question of the Akan against the Ewe, the Gan against the Northerner, but a question of those who have against those who have not. A question of the vast majority of hungry people against a very tiny minority of greedy, inhumane, selfish senior officers, politicians, businessmen and their bank managers, and a bunch of cowardly Lebanese who will not stay in their country to fight for a cause. But who is the fool? You and I. You and I are the bigger fools for allowing such a blatant abuse of human dignity for so long. 22 years after independence, you and I are still hitting our head on the ground and leaving it to God to save us one day. Where on this earth has God come to the salvation of a people without the sovereign, starving, hungry people taking the law into their own hands? America has seen her brand of a revolution. France has seen her brand of a revolution. Britain has seen her brand of a revolution. Russia, China, Iran, all of them. Only the black man in the black African continent goes on leading his fellow black men like a herd of cattle while suppressing them like slaves. Let me tell you today that God will not help you, and the big man will not help you, because his stomach is full, his children's stomach are full, and there is enough for them to go and come as they like. Only you can help yourself. On Wednesday, 30th May 1979, the court-martial resumed. There was something very significant this time. On the walls of Burma camp leading to Burma Hall, posters were conspicuous, and early arrivals could not miss the messages. Some were written in chalk. Stop the trial or else. If you want to die, continue this trial. Revolution or death. The struggle will continue. On the night of 3rd June 1979, two corporals approached the guards on duty and asked them to be ready to release Rawlings on June 4th, to which they consented. Exactly at 2:30 a.m. on June 4th, the special branch man in charge of the keys to Rawlings' cell alarmed the guards that soldiers were shooting themselves in Burma camp, and that Rawlings should not be made to know, but the boys were on their guard. An hour and a half later, one of the guards heard a familiar voice. It was one lieutenant and 3 other ranks who had arrived. The man holding the keys to Rawlings' cell had disappeared, so they found an iron bar with which they hit the lock until it opened. Earlier, one of them who arrived wanted to fire into the lock, but Rawlings stopped him. When the door was opened, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings was dragged out straight to the broadcasting house, which was 500 yards away, where soldiers had been stationed. Flight Lieutenant Rawlings had been jotting down some notes, but what he read to wake up Ghanaians was disjointed, disorganized, and extemporaneous. He was excited, anxious, and panting, and this is what he said. This is Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. The ranks have just taken over the destiny of this country. Fellow officers, if we are to avoid any bloodshed, I plead with you not to attempt to stand in their way, because they are full of malice, hatred we have forced onto them through these years of suppression. They are ready to get it out, the venom that we have created. So for heaven's sake, do not attempt to stand in their way. They are not fools. If you have any reason to fear them, you may run. If you have no reason to feel guilty, do not move. Like I said, they are not fools. The judgment will come. This is what will take place in every unit outside Accra. All units are to elect their own representative to the new Revolutionary Council that has come to replace the Supreme Military Council, which is no more. The Ghana Armed Forces will be handing over to the civilians in due time. Elections will take place. But before the elections go on, justice, which has been denied to the Ghanaian worker, will have to take place. I promise you, you are either part of the problem or part of the solution. There is no middle way. After the announcement, there was one formidable opposition. The army commander, Major General Odate Wellington, could not have taken it lying low. He mobilized opposing forces, forced his way into the broadcasting house just over an hour later, and announced that coup has been foiled.
Good morning, fellow countrymen. I have come to the studio to confirm that the uprising which took place during the early hours of this morning has been quelled. I am hereby ordering all officers and men of the Ghana Armed Forces to return to their respective units. Steps are being taken to restore the armed forces to normalcy. All officers and men of the Ghana Armed Forces, I repeat, are to report back to their respective units, whilst steps are being taken to protect life and property. I would like to assure all citizens to go about their normal duties, whilst the SMC is taking all measures to ensure that life and property are protected. I would also like to add that all officers and men, whether they were actively involved in the uprising or not, are to report back to their units, whilst steps are being taken to iron out any grievances or any alleged injustices. Fellow countrymen, I have come to the studio once again, this time to make a special appeal to all members of the armed forces. I urge all ranks who are armed to cease firing forthwith. I also urge Flight Lieutenant Rawlings and any following whom he has with him to meet me at headquarters.
The fighting continued and the army commander himself was chased to the Nima police station where he was shot dead. Later in the afternoon, an unidentified voice told the nation on radio that the revolutionary forces were still in power and that all former SMC members, that's Supreme Military Council members, and leading functionaries should report to the police for their own safety. It was the Chief of Defense Staff, Major General Joshua Hamidu, who cleared the doubts once and for all. I am happy to announce that the hypocrisy of the Achampon and the Kufu regime has been brought to an end. All members of the said regime are to report to the Air Force Station or the nearest police station now for their own safety. We wish to assure you that the elections will go on as planned. It is in the national interest, therefore, that we are pursuing this course. We have suffered for far too long. May God bless this nation. In a radio and television broadcast on the night of June 5th, 1979, Captain Boachijan, spokesman for the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, named Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings as chairman of the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council. Other members of the council were named as Major Mensa Poku, Major Mensa Bedema, Warrant Officer Class 2 Obing, Lance Corporal Gachiko, Private Osu Edu, Corporal Osu Boatin, Staff Sergeant Alex J, Lieutenant Commander Bano.
Now that the people of Ghana have democratically elected me to their president, I call on all, in the true spirit of patriotism, to come together as one united country, determined to solve the many and difficult problems facing us.
Revolutionary Council, during our short stay in power, have demonstrated openly what many people had only suspected before, namely that the holding of office in government in this country had in almost all cases been used to plunder the wealth of the nation. Ghana is looking up to you. Thank you.